Welcome to Sassy, Soulful, and Sensitive, a podcast for us introverts, empaths, and highly sensitive people. I'm your host, Cam Nichols, and together we're going to explore the strengths and struggles that come along with our sensitivity and learn how to trust our intuition and trust our voice. Let's dive in. What's up, buttercups? Hope you're having a fantastic day. So I'm curious, how is your journey of remembering your true identity going? Are you recognizing more and more the powerful force of nature that you actually are? I hope you are, because as I continue my own journey, I am consistently reminded about how empowering and impactful this remembering of our innate power is in all aspects of life. In my relationships, in my work, in my personal hobbies. More on that in a second. We've had an unusual amount of thunderstorms in Salt Lake City over the last couple months, and I just continue to love it. We have one like every couple of days, and every single time it just reminds me how powerful nature, and therefore we as human beings, actually are. And I've always marveled at the power and beauty of nature. When I was younger, I used to sit in the library for hours reading books about the sea and storms and lightnings and how they formed and just how they all worked. And this is how I discovered weather patterns are created by different levels of pressure, which is exactly kind of what I want to talk about today. Because the pressure that exists in nature is what creates just breathtaking storms and gentle breezes that really just kind of shape our environment. And as I've gotten older and embraced my own journey, and as I've helped others on their journey, it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating to see the parallels between nature and our human experience, especially when it comes to pressure that we put on ourselves and the environment and reality that we create because of it. Our inner climate creates our external environment. Positive pressure, because there's multiple kinds of pressure, right? Like there's positive pressure, there's negative pressure, and positive pressure can be a catalyst for growth and transformation. It's the driving force behind setting goals, embracing challenges, pushing ourselves beyond our comfort zones. And when we allow positive pressure into our lives, we create a dynamic and energizing environment that propels us forward. However, there's also the negative pressure, which can be destructive as a hurricane, okay? Like, under pressure. It comes in the form of self-imposed expectations. Self-imposed being the key words here. It comes in the form of comparison and the fear of failure. We often find ourselves trapped in the relentless grip of perfectionism, where we're constantly striving for an unattainable ideal. And we know this. I know you know this. This isn't new. But the negative pressure weighs us down and it inhibits our progress, and it really just kind of robs us of joy in our lives. And as I've been coaching a lot on pressure, I've been using the analogy. It's like the pressure we're putting on ourselves, we're holding ourselves down to the ground, but we're expecting ourselves to run still. But it's like we're like flat on the ground under the pressure. And it's like, we can't even walk, let alone run. We're lucky if we can stand. But here's what I want to offer. Just like weather patterns shift and change, so does our inner climate. It's about finding that delicate balance between positive and negative pressures. And it's about understanding ourselves so intimately that we know when we need to hunker down and let the storm pass, or whether it's time to like go out and dance in the rain. So I want to tell you a personal story to help kind of solidify or cement kind of what I'm trying to say. So I remember doing an activity. This was years and years and years ago when I was in corporate leadership. I was doing a leadership activity with the other leaders in my group. I want to say there were like 7 or 8 of us, 7 to 10 of us. I can't even remember, but it was a pretty big group. And we were making personal pizzas from scratch. Like we were kneading and stretching the dough. We were mixing the sauce. We were laying the toppings, like the whole shebang. And I absolutely love pizza. Like seriously, I could eat it every day of my life if my body and or my husband would actually allow it. But that aside, doing this activity totally had my anxiety and my nervous system on red alert, which you think I would be like super excited for because of how much I love pizza. But like I was so heightened. Like I had a hurricane of negative self-talk that was so loud in my mind. It was practically paralyzing. And it sounded like I don't know how to do this. My pizza is going to look terrible. Everyone else's pizza is looking so much better than mine. Like why can't I just have fun like everybody else? Oh my gosh, I shouldn't be embarrassed or anxious by this. That's ridiculous. I look like such an idiot. I had judgments about what was happening, and then I had judgments on top of my judgments. And honestly, knowing me, because I like to try to overachieve, I probably had judgments about my judgments about having judgments. Let's all be honest here. I avoided every part of the process that I possibly could. Every part. And the other leaders that I was close with, like everyone was trying to encourage me and talk me down, but my anxiety just got worse and it just added a shit ton more embarrassment. And it all felt like a complete recipe for disaster. And yes, that pun was very, very intended. And y'all, it's fucking pizza. Like the only way pizza can truly be terrible is if you like burn it to a crisp in the oven, which was not going to happen in this case because we were being guided by professional chefs. It was completely foolproof that it was going to turn out great as long as I, tried and participated and asked for help if I needed it. But here's the thing. I didn't feel confident in myself. I don't consider myself a cook at all. I was not confident in my abilities. And I sure as hell did not feel that I had access to be able to even express what was going on internally. And yeah, I couldn't ask for help. I couldn't even receive the encouragement that my friends and peers were giving me. I couldn't receive it. And so I basically just ended up suffering in silence. And even though I was suffering in silence, I am 100% sure my body and my face did not do a great job of hiding how I was feeling. Like I can't hide that shit. But something that was supposed to be such a fun activity to help us as leaders bond and connect, it turned into an absolute torture chamber of isolation and embarrassment and anxiety and shame. Like, friends, it was truly awful. But now, let's jump forward to 2023. Just a couple weeks ago, it's my first time making sushi rolls. There are no professionals here to guide me. I've spent the last 6 months cooking more, and I've gotten over my fear of using kitchen knives because that was one reason I hated cooking, was because of cutting with the kitchen knife. I was always afraid that I was going to cut myself. And the funny thing is, as I've cut myself a ton of times and doing different things, and like I pick at my nails, like these things aren't new, but like I was just so scared of like cutting off a finger or something. and I know that doesn't happen often, but it does happen. Anyway, so I for the most part have gotten over that fear over the last 6 months as I've continued to practice cooking. And just like with the pizzas, everything was there and it just needed to be prepped and put together. And I still had some anxiety because I'm in a kitchen. I still don't consider myself a cook. And I wanted that sushi roll to turn out and look like those that we order in the restaurant. So there was still some anxiety there. But this time I utilized my tools. I expressed my fears. I expressed my hopes and desires of what I wanted it to happen. And I also reminded myself that I was a beginner at this. And I just jumped in expecting things to be messy. And the thoughts were very, very different. I was very honest with myself of like, my strengths are in coaching and emotional processing and intuition. It is not making sushi. It's okay if it looks terrible. The process of making this is going to be an adventure. This is going to be a memory. The outcome of how the sushi roll looks is not going to matter past putting it in my mouth. That one's a fun one for me. I'm doing this in order to learn to be healthier. These were some of the thoughts that were going through my head. And as I finished my first sushi roll and I put it on the plate, I was like, damn, that's a pretty good first sushi roll. Well done. And it was also very delicious. And I haven't thought about how it looked ever since I put it down on the plate. So I use these two cooking examples as a way to show you the negative pressure and the positive pressure. And so here are things that I recognize that made all the difference between these two different experiences. So 1, I was aware that my thoughts created my feelings. 2, I understood what was happening in my body and what was happening to my nervous system. And then 3, I had the tools and used them to manage my thoughts and my nervous system. And it turned out great. And we're going to be making more in the future, 100%. But looking back, the negative pressure surrounding the whole pizza ordeal, it seems really, really absurd. But at that moment, it was my reality, and it was very, very real. And I have compassion for that version of myself that was absolutely terrified and paralyzed. And I'm so grateful that I've done the inner work to change how I view my past and view that past experience. Like, I'm not ashamed of that anymore. I actually think it's kind of cute. I kind of chuckled to myself, even as I was like thinking about what I wanted to talk to you about today, and the story came to my mind. I was like, oh boy, that was rough, and it was hilarious. But I couldn't always think that. It wasn't until I did the inner work to change how I viewed my past and how I viewed myself, and gave myself compassion. We can't spend our lives avoiding pressure, but we can choose how to think about it and how to address it. We can learn how to discern the difference between these two types of pressures and how to care for ourselves when we become overwhelmed as sensitive people. Life can be overwhelming. Like, it's going to happen. We can learn how to hold space for our past experiences. We can lean into experiencing our present, and we can be open to the future that unfolds as we actively play with these types of pressure. And I use the word play very, very intentionally here. When we play, life is so much more fun. You can't put pressure on yourself when you're playing. Think about when you were a kid. Time and pressure, like none of that mattered when you were playing. So listen to the signals in your brain, in your body, and make conscious choices about them. Take a moment to reflect on your own weather patterns. Where can you harness this positive pressure to fuel your growth and propel you toward your goals? And then also ask yourself, where do I need to release some of the negative pressure that holds me down, that holds me back? And how can I embrace self-compassion and self-care instead? Y'all know how I feel about some self-compassion and self-care. It is absolutely necessary. So remember, you have the power to shape your own weather patterns. You're basically Storm from X-Men. Like, you can control the weather. You don't control it all the time, but you can when you need to, when you want to. And with a little self-awareness and intention, like, you can create a climate that actually nurtures and empowers you. So I invite you to step into your power and embrace your ability to play with pressure so that you can create more of that inner climate that you desire. Because again, when you create the inner climate, it affects your reality, it affects your environment. And when you feel like you can't control the inner climate, you can control how you take care of yourself and the compassion that you give yourself in that moment. So that is what I want to leave you with today, my friends. I hope this was helpful. I hope my ridiculous cooking stories and weather analogies help tie things together, because this idea of just pressure and how much pressure we're putting on ourselves as highly sensitive people. The pressure is what goes into people pleasing and perfectionism and all of that. And it's completely unnecessary. And when we learn to be more compassionate with ourselves about the pressure and learn how to play with it, we can shift that from negative pressure to positive pressure. You can be the piece of coal that is pressured into a diamond. Like, that is essentially what we're doing here. And I just want you to know that it is not always easy, and that's okay. It's not supposed to. If you're really doing the inner work, it's not always a fun time. Sometimes you gotta hunker down for the storm. And then other times you gotta go and play in the rain. So remember, my friends, as always, shining bright gives other people permission to shine as well. Take care. Hey, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. If you want to learn how to find your voice and lean in more to the powerful force of nature that you know exists within you, head on over to coachwithcam.com and take the What Element Are You quiz. You'll discover how to align with your secret strength that you perceive as a weakness so you can break the cycle of doubt and step into your badassery. And if you enjoyed the show, make sure to follow, rate, and review it on your favorite podcast platform and share it with a friend or family member who you want to connect with on a deeper level. You'll be helping other sensitive folks like yourself and like me find and join our amazing community. So let's connect and support each other on this incredible journey.